Good evening. There is something I haven't done for a while. Let's build a PC. And not just any PC, but an AMD Ryzen PC. It's a ThreadRipper. And you know it's a ThreadRipper because it says here, rip here. So let's do that. And inside we find a CD, a tool of some kind, and more stuff. And lucky for you, I already happen to know how to open this thing. So inside this we find, and inside here we find an AMD Ryzen ThreadRipper processor. Of course, besides all this stuff, we also need a motherboard. This is an MSI motherboard. Wow, it is more difficult to get good camera angles than I thought. In any case, what we need is to put the processor inside here. Take the protective cover out from here and then insert the processor into the carriage. Insert it properly, hopefully, like so. It's nicely there, and then just press it there. Finally, we close this lid and screw the lids. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, and 3. Then we need some DDR4 memory, which we shall put in the proper slot. One of these is fine. There we go. Then we need a cooler. This will probably do fine. And some thermal paste, which we shall put into a couple of spots here. And then the attachments for the cooler. And then when these are tightened, we put the cooler sink, heat sink right there. Right on top of that. Once it's there, just tighten it up. There we go. Attach the pump fan connector to the pump fan connector. Then CPU fan 1 connector, CPU fan 2 connector, which is your sysfan, yeah, there we have it. Sysfan 2 and Sysfan 3. Then we put a display card in. Did I already put memory? Yes, I did. Display card is there. And then we just need power for the motherboard, power for the graphics card, power for the CPU, CPU power 1, CPU power 1. Right now we probably don't need CPU power 2. then power into the power supply unit, and when we put power into the power supply, we should get a reaction somewhere. Yes, we do. We have a red power LED here, and the PCI card is saying it has power. Let's dim the lights so we can probably see things a little better. Also, we need storage. Storage gets power, and storage gets storage connector. Here we go. And now time to see what happens if I power this on. Power on. Power on. Curiously, on the motherboard it doesn't do any indication of power on self-test. There's a LED display which should show me where it is going in the power on self-test, but it doesn't show there anything. There was something on the screen, but it went past really quickly. Hello? Hello, what happened? Can I please see that again? Okay, it went straight into Linux, but that's not what I want, so I'm going to press reset. Alright, we got a BIOS set up. So it seems to recognize the CPU just fine. AMD Ryzen ThreadRipper 1950X at 3.4 GHz, which is exactly correct. But curiously it says V-core is 0.032 volts, DDR voltage is 0.064 volts. These are totally incorrect. If I switch to hardware monitor, which I can find fan info probably. CPU temperature 4 degrees Celsius, system temperature 4 degrees Celsius. Storage is recognized properly, memory is recognized properly. There's one Kingston 16 gigabytes. Hardware monitor. Yeah, 4 degrees Celsius for the CPU and 4 degrees Celsius for the system. And that is totally wrong. CPU core voltage 0.032, VDD SOC 0.032 volts, system 3.3 volts is 0.064, and these are all totally hogwash. Boot, advanced. I'm not going to touch those settings right now. Actually, just to make on the safe side, let's restore the default settings. Restore defaults, yeah. Restore defaults and then reboot. Yeah. And now we are in the BIOS again, and it still says 0.032. There's also other problems with this motherboard. If I plug a PS2 keyboard into this, it doesn't recognize it at all. Also, have a look at what happens when I power this system on. There is a display here, which should be showing the power on self-test status, but instead it shows 0.00 all the time. There are also LEDs here that show what it is doing while it is booting, and those LEDs do work properly. So there were a couple of problems with this motherboard. It wouldn't recognize the PS2 keyboard. When it powers on, the post display always shows 00 and no indication of whatever it is doing. And in the EFI/BIOS setup, it always reports the CPU and RAM voltages, all the voltages basically, as totally nonsense values. And I brought these issues up in an email with a vendor, and they responded saying, send the motherboard back to us and we will check it. So I did. I packed the motherboard and everything that came with it very carefully back into the box where it came and sent it back to the vendor. And then I waited. A week or two later, I received a message from the seller saying they cannot do anything. There is a damage in the board that is not covered in warranty. Apparently there was a problem with the CPU socket. Some of the pins were bent. And I knew exactly what that meant. See, when I was packing this motherboard back for sending to the seller after all the defects that I had noticed, I was very careful to put everything back in the way they were. And that includes this plastic cover that came with the CPU. The cover goes on top of the CPU, something like, let's see if I can find the proper alignment, something like this, and then on top of that goes this plastic cover, which goes to the sled like this, and then this goes on top of all of that with the screws in. But when I was trying to do that, I couldn't find the proper orientation for this plastic part. I tried many different ways to put it there, and eventually I gave up because I couldn't find a way to put it back there. So I left it out. But in the process of trying to put this in different orientations, trying to put and place it here, I must have bent some of these pins. And they sent me photographs showing where the damage was. You can see the photographs here. Can you find anything missing here? Can you find anything wrong here? It took me very long to find anything wrong in these pictures, and I think it took very long for the people in that company called Gumbo. It probably took very long for them too. But they did, and because they did, they refused warranty on this motherboard. Let's have a closer look at these pins. And here we have a close-up of the CPU socket. Can you see a problem here? It's kinda difficult to see from that screen. In any case, can you see the problem? Let me take an even closer close-up. Here is a close-up. I can see at least one pin kind of sticks out. It reflects light differently than the others. They should be quite easy to fix once I get the proper camera angle. I am using a very small safety pin, and with it I just very carefully push the pin so that its position matches the neighboring pins. And that's done. Let's see what else is there. Let's pan the camera to the next section of pins. Because these are very, very tiny pins, it is very difficult to keep the camera focus. In any case, here we find another pin that was probably the actual problem that the police service center found. I am pretty sure this did not exist when I packed the motherboard, but I digress. It is impossible to prove by now. Same as the last time, I tried to use a safety pin to adjust the pin. When that did not immediately produce good results, I tried with these medical-grade needle drivers. But this tool turned out to be way too big, and I cancelled this plan before I caused more damage. Next I tried with two safety pins. Again, these are very, very tiny pins, but still surprisingly rigid. A regular safety pin would be way too thick to use for this purpose. I kept trying to fix the pin for many hours and many days, but I was unable to get it to look exactly and perfectly like the other pins. I am almost certain that this pin did not have anything to do with the problems that I sent the motherboard back to the vendor for. The post display showing absolutely nothing aside from zeros when the motherboard boots, the PS2 keyboard connector not working, the temperature and voltage measurement being completely nonsense. I also tried an M2 internal SSD with it, and it also had some problems. The motherboard does boot up and load and run operating systems just fine, as long as you use a USB keyboard and not a PS2 keyboard. However, because of the broken temperature and voltage measurements, there is a chance it will not throttle CPU cooling properly. I think it is unfair that the vendor, Tick from Poland, who uses the name Gumbo in Amazon, refused warranty repair of this motherboard because of this unrelated cosmetic problem. But I don't think I am able to pursue this matter further. This motherboard cost me 480 euros including shipping, and I think I have to count it as a loss. I did buy another motherboard, an Asrock Taichi X399, and it works just fine. My desktop is currently running the 32-core Threadripper processor 1950X overclocked at 4.1 GHz with quad-channel memory overclocked at 3.1 GHz, and it's working just fine. But this MSI motherboard is currently vacant, and I don't know what to do with it. Let me know if you have some ideas. Once again, I bid you shalom, peace, health and blessings in all areas of your life. See you again. Take care. Bye. And that's where I was planning to end the video originally. However, in the interest of fair and accurate presentation, there is more I should say. After several rounds of email with the customer care of Gumbo, they offered me 2 glimmers of hope. When I claimed based on the photos they sent me that fixing the pin should be trivial, they said if you succeed to fix the pin back and the motherboard still works just like it was when you received it, you can use the warranty, as you contact directly with MSI, or send it back to us. However, I have no idea how strict they are going to be about it. Contrary to my expectations, I have not been able to entirely fix the pin. In fact, I am not totally even convinced my attempts have not made it even worse. In any case, even if the pin makes proper electrical contact, there are visual differences between that pin and the neck-boring pins. I have no reason to believe they wouldn't reject this board, again for these superficial reasons. When I brought these concerns up, they offered me another solution. Contact an authorized MSI service in Finland, a company called InfoCare, and take it up with them. Explain the situation and have them check it. In other words, they want to take themselves out of the equation. So the situation is looking pretty bad, but it may not be over yet. I'm not sure what kind of takeaway messages this video has for you. Always be careful? Well, I was careful, I was trying to be careful, but look where it got me. Well, in any case, I was able to build a working computer as explained earlier. If you want to build a similar computer, there are links in the video description that take you to Amazon, where you can buy exactly the same parts that I used. And in any case, see you again, take care, bye.